This week on the Hollywood and Toto podcast, comedian Andrew Schulz drops so many truth bombs we may never be the same. And we're better for it, that's for sure. We talked to comedian Derek Richards about cancel culture, about his work on Normal World over at Blaze TV, and also why he decided to open up on stage about a very personal part of his life. And we take another look at late night TV and some of the fake news they've been peddling so aggressively without an ounce of regret. Yeah, they say you can't hate the media enough. Well, you can't distrust late night comedians anymore. But after the show, maybe you will.
Welcome to the Hollywood and Toto podcast. Entertainment news and reviews without the woke Hollywood narrative. Free speech, free expression. Now that's entertainment. And here's your host, award-winning film critic, Christian Toto.
I've had my eye on Andrew Schulz for a while now. You're not going to see him on Saturday Night Live or late night couches, but somehow, miraculously, he's a big star all the same, selling out arenas across the country. How? Well, doesn't play by the rules, doesn't care about woke, doesn't read from the hymnal, the comedian's hymnal that Stephen Colbert and company read from every single night. He follows the funny wherever it leads him. Not right, not left, just open-minded, curious, and hey, I'm a comedian. I can say what I want. How totally 80s is that? Well, just recently, Andrew Schulz uncorked a monologue for the ages. And I don't say that with any sort of hyperbole because it was just a barn burner. He made fun of Biden and Trump and Harris and all the different people. He also spoke truth to power in a way that really does matter. Because in case you forgot, there was an assassination attempt on a presidential candidate just a few weeks ago. It seems like everyone has forgot, certainly late night comedians, certainly a lot of other comedians as well, but not Andrew Schulz. And his whole monologue from his Flagrant podcast is worth a listen. But I wanted to zero in on this one little snippet because I think it matters. And also the fact that he's addressing it matters as well. Here he's talking about the shooter who almost took down Trump and how he got away with it.
But he must have designed a pretty ingenious plot to circumvent the Secret Service and Oh, what's that? Wait, you're saying that Herbie Potter was just walking around with a loaded gun like he was on an Alec Baldwin set? This Mickey Mouse security detail was so goofy it made Donald duck. Oh, boy. Who's in charge of the Secret Service? A lady? Wait, what? Seriously? Well, of course she didn't have anyone on top of the building. Women only care about shots on a roof when there's a pool party. But it doesn't exactly feel like a 20-year-old fetal alcohol face McLovin should be able to infiltrate the most advanced security detail in history. I mean, the only other thing he's penetrated was his palm. Did Kim Cheadle hire Epstein's NyQuil Night Watch?
It's edgy. It's important. It's, again, speaking truth to power in a way that very few comedians are doing these days. And he was clearly having a blast with that entire segment. Again, I recommend you watch the whole thing. Very, very funny stuff. But why does it matter? Well, for one thing, we had an assassination attempt. That seems like a big deal. For another thing, the red flags around this event just keep piling up and piling up and piling up. The video proof, the fact that we've seen the shooter scrambling on that rooftop, the fact that they knew that there was someone, a person of interest in the area, minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour before Trump hit the stage and started giving his remarks. There are so many problems with the story. Breakdowns in security, agents not stationed where they should be, sight lines not checked out, drones disowned. It goes on and on. And yet we're not joking about it. We're not talking about it. That's why what Andrew Schulz said here does matter. Now, the irony is that probably with social media and YouTube and Rumble and other places, more people saw this than may have seen your typical Stephen Colbert monologue. I mean, that's a good thing, but he shouldn't be the only one speaking up about this. Everyone should be outraged. I don't care if you vote for Trump or Biden or Harris or anyone. We had someone try to take down a presidential candidate, and a few weeks later, we've moved on with our lives while so many questions are going on. Where are the journalists? Where's the accountability? Where's the investigation? And that's where the comedians come in, the satirists, because they remind us what's going on, because they say, hey, wait a minute, stop and think of what happened and what the implications are. That's why comedians are so powerful. They're so important. And that's why it's such a dereliction of duty to do what Colbert and Kimmel and Oliver and all these clowns, and I don't even use that in a very positive way, do day after day and week after week. They ignore reality. They push aside inconvenient narratives. They do it all the time. They don't go near the truth. They just propagandize for their preferred candidate. And you know what? I think I'm okay with that. You want to be a left-leaning or right-leaning comic? Have at it. But when you ignore what's going on, we ignore the things that truly matter in favor of that propaganda, you're doing something wrong. So bravo to Andrew Schulz, a funny comedian, a brave comedian, someone who doesn't play by the rules, someone who is telling the jokes we need to hear now, as they say, more than ever. While the rest of the late night crowd, they bury their heads in the sand. It's not ha-ha funny, but it is funny, and it's sad. You know, I've been curious about the current state of cancel culture when it comes to comedians. What can they say? What they can no longer say? Is the woke mob out to get them as aggressively as it was a year or two ago? It does feel like things are loosening a bit, that the chains that have held down comedians there's some slack there, there's some wiggle room, and that's a really good thing. I don't think cancel culture is dead. I don't think the woke mob is going to go away anytime soon, but progress is progress. It's one of the many reasons why I wanted to have Derek Richards back on the show. You know, funny fellow, doesn't play by the rules, much like Andrew Schulz, but also he's able to go in different directions. He's able to kind of say things that other people maybe can't say. I asked him about cancel culture, where things stand these days, how the audiences are receptive to his jokes. Are they encouraging him to get political? Are they a little bit leery of dangerous material or jokes that just maybe aren't as smart or as strong or as unifying as they might be? We go into all of that. And we also explore why he decided to be very open about a very personal fight he had a few years ago. He had a cancer situation. He's since recovered. He's in recovery. That's great. But do you share that information on stage? And how do you do so? Well, Derek decided to share it after a while. And I think he's pretty glad that he did so. I am too. I love that kind of raw honesty. And I think as someone who's battled cancer in his family, my wife has had breast cancer, I want to hear these recovery stories. I want to get some faith and some hope from people like Derek Richards who have gone through hell and back and survived, and they're still smiling. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Derek Richards, a funny guy, pops up on the Normal World show a lot. That's on Blaze TV. Also on tour as we speak. We'll have some more information about that shortly. So check him out. And of course, if you want to find more information, just go to DerekRichards.com. You'll find all the tour dates, all the information. Derek, a couple of weeks ago, I was at a comedy club. I was watching Jimmy Fallon. And earlier that day, someone nearly assassinated Donald Trump. We're living in a very weird time. It's that's a very gentle way to say it. But it's also hard times, and it's also confusing. It's also divisive. Does all of that make your job tougher as a comedian, or do you find that people are so happy to lean into your jokes and to smile and to laugh? What's it been like for you in recent months?
You know, I think it depends where you're at, Christian. I think the area of the country that you're in kind of dictates, you know, people's attitudes and so forth. I mean, years ago, you know, people would say, oh, you go to an area that was and you can say whatever you want and everything's fine. And that is just not the case now at all. So, I mean, I find even now you end up going into a place that's very Republican, very conservative, and they are much more apt to laugh and have a good time at stuff. But I think as a rule, yeah, we are living in a dumpster fire. It really is. This is just a complete disaster. And it's so funny because if people say, oh, this is a horrible time to be alive, I'm like, this is the greatest time to be alive. When would you have ever thought about seeing Hulk Hogan speak at the Republican National Convention?
That's right.
And be inspired by it and be fired up. Yeah. So, I mean, I think people start to the clubs and laugh and have a good time. I think you need to address certain things, you know, in the show. I mean, obviously, you know, as comedians, we're always, our brains are always working around whatever is existing in our current atmosphere. I mean, the one joke that I did, and I said, wow, I said, it's pretty crazy. I said, the Trump's shooter's online search said that the last thing he was looking at was porn. And I said, wow, this guy really wanted to see somebody take it in the face. Wrong. I know. but the crowd like you did. They laughed and then they put their heads down. So I was joking around. I said, listen, I got 2 weeks of shelf life on this joke, so let me get it out.
You know, veteran comedians like yourself have a skill. You've built it over time where you can sense out a crowd. You maybe lean into this kind of humor. You go that way. Does that radar? I guess that radar is more important now than ever to not even know the feel of the crowd, the political feel, the part of the country, what the headlines are. It sounds like the first 5 minutes of your stand up is almost like a feeling out process. What's that been like?
Well, I think it's always a feeling out process, regardless of what's going on in the country with any stand-up performance. And reverting to UC and Jimmy Fallon, who's hysterical, and he's on Fox News Saturday night, always on top of all the current event stuff. So for him and his audience, they come to expect that. And when you're a comedian who does not have his notoriety and does not have that big following coming out to see you, you're kind of walking into a uncharted waters. You don't know exactly how it's going to go. So, yeah, you kind of feel things out a little bit. But at the end of the day, you just got to do what you're comfortable with. And, you know, Aerosmith doesn't change their set list. I mean, I'm not comparing myself to Aerosmith, but I'm like, you know what? This is what I had planned. This is who I am. This is what I'm about. And if you don't like it, you can, you know, settle up your tab and hit the door.
Gotcha. Now, are you based in Vegas these days?
Yeah, based in Vegas and looking to relocate to Detroit here pretty soon.
Oh, wow. I was kind of curious about sort of when you think about a young comic coming up, it's like LA, it's New York. And now I know Austin is huge in the comedy scene. And I know other comedians like Nick DiPaolo is based in the Southeast, I believe. Is that more flexible for you where you don't feel as confined, where you can say, I can be in Detroit, I can be in Vegas, I can do this and still have the career you have?
Oh, absolutely. I think now, especially with the internet and being able to throw your stuff out there on Instagram and Facebook, and you get your content there, as long as you have an internet hookup, you can be relevant. And I think it's great for these guys that are in New York and in Los Angeles. But you know, even if you're not based there, and as you well know from your experience, I mean, you can write scripts and be rejected from anywhere in the country.
I've been rejected from all parts of the country. Trust me.
But no, I think it's, some guys feel that need to be pulled into New York or Los Angeles. I mean, I think the New York comedy scene to me is stronger than the one in LA, only because there's some clubs in a condensed area, and New Yorkers really seem to have that, I could care less attitude and say what you want. I mean, to me, some of my favorite comics come from the East Coast. I mean, such as Bill Burr, and then going back to, when he was still alive, Greg Giraldo. I thought was hysterical. So just my personal brand of humor seems to come from the East Coast more so than the West Coast. But yeah, you can be anywhere you want in the country and do fine.
Gotcha. All right. You're a comedian. You got your work on social media. I was watching a clip of you talking about how someone wanted to buy your ex-wife. It was just classic. What's the best part about social media for a comedian, and what's the worst part, the stuff that drives you crazy?
It's the same, it's the exact same thing. The best part of social media is being able to put your stuff out there to try to gain a bigger audience. But that's the best part. The worst part is putting your stuff out there for every moron out there with a Wi-Fi connection to sit there and pick apart what you're saying and try to piece together some kind of narrative that, where they go, what, wait a minute, what? Where you end up seeing somebody make some comment, or then they'll go ahead and share it to a bunch of their people. And then you start kind of building up that, cancel culture mentality where people just want to hop in and just make stupid comments. So yeah, the best part about it is the exact same thing as the worst part. It's very bizarre.
I have a sense, and I could be wrong, much more than I do on this front, that cancel culture, that sort of I'm offended by your jokes, is lessening a little bit, that we're getting a bit collectively sick of that. Is that accurate? Do you see that? And what are you kind of watching? And this is your work. This is your field. What's happening on the streets?
I mean, it seems to have dialed back because now they realize that when they go ahead and try to cancel somebody, they end up gaining followers and gaining momentum. So in the process of them going ahead and sharing, hey, can you believe that this jackass said this? And they share it to all their followers. And then there's a bunch of people that may be on the perimeter of these people and they go, well, I kind of thought that was funny. And then they follow, and then you end up getting a new fan base. So I think so much of that has backfired for those people. And I think at the end of the day, cancel culture, unless you end up killing somebody or drugging somebody or human trafficking somebody, that'll cancel you. I think we're now beyond the point where jokes cancel people, and now a lot of stuff too. Like, I go off and we were talking a little bit before we started recording about working on a cruise ship, and I don't even put the cruise lines that I work on my website because some have an attitude or see one of your jokes and they feel offended. They will go ahead and they'll tag like all your gigs that you have coming up. I've seen that happen. And I'm like, you know what? I don't need him tagging the cruise line. You want to tag a comedy club, go ahead and do it all day long. I can't believe you hire this guy who makes these inappropriate comments. I'm like, good. Go ahead and tag them all day. But in a corporate setting, you want to do a corporate event. If it's for Microsoft, I wouldn't put Microsoft on there. I just say, corporate event, private event, and just leave it like that. Just because why expose yourself to these, people that just seem to have nothing better to do with their time than to try to wreck your day.
So generally speaking, the comedy clubs have thicker skins. They know this whole ecosystem, and they're okay with. They understand that some people will be angry, but in a more corporate climate, they may be more sensitive and think, "Oh my gosh, I can't have this happen." Is that fair to say?
No, definitely. Well, and if you look at even the areas of the country, like say for example, if you were working a comedy club in Portland or Seattle, which is a very very leftist area. That happened to Jim Florentine and a couple of other comedians that ended up getting canceled out of their gig in Seattle. They got booked for the gig, and then a bunch of people up there were all up in arms because they lean towards the right with their comedy. And then they end up getting canceled from that particular club. So for the most part, I would say 98% of the clubs in the country have a pretty thick skin, and they're like, good, you want to be pissed off? Come out here. I'll take your money.
Gotcha. And I think those comedians actually got more publicity from that situation. I think that's a great case of it all backfiring. I want to touch briefly on, you different things. I've loved seeing you on Normal World with Blaze and Dave Landau and Quarterback Garrett. Talk about that experience, because it feels so freewheeling. It's such to me, it's almost like a throwback to the Howard Stern days with this sort of anything goes comic sensibility. But you're doing that show from time to time. What's that been like?
It's been fantastic. It's one of the best things that's happened to me. It's given me a reason to be excited about this business. Show business as well as anybody. When it's something new comes along and you have something that's different, like the show that Dave puts together. That was his brainchild and putting together the sketches and so forth. And it's such a cool format to see that on Blaze TV, which is a very, very conservative network that has a lot of politically driven shows. The network was started by Glenn Beck years ago after he had left Fox. And so it's cool to see Glenn Beck, who has such a great sense of humor. He is so nice and such a funny guy. He really, really is. And he loves comedy. He loves comedians. He loves irreverency. He's very conservative himself, but he can appreciate a good sense of humor. So it's good to see that platform has embraced that show, and it's done as well as it has. And it's just a great experience to be in there and do the show as many times as I can. And Dave's one of the funniest people that's out there working, and he and his whole staff just do a great job putting everything together. So it's been a lot of fun.
It's funny that when the 80s, you think about comedy and freewheeling and anything goes. The sense was, and I think it was accurate to a degree, that people on the right, maybe even social conservatives, were the scolds. They didn't want you to tell this joke and that. And now I think it's in a way come full circle where people on the right are like, it's all right, it's offensive, it's whatever, it's hey, run with it. And now the left are kind of wagging their finger at people. So it's at least someone's out there doing that. But what's top of mind for you these days when you're on the road doing material? Is it much different than it was maybe 10 or so years ago? What sort of got your goat as a comedian and a truth teller?
Well, I think the divisiveness in this country right now, as far as all the political stuff that's going on, when you look at even the past, 3 weeks of what's happened, someone, tries to assassinate the former president. The existing president is perfectly fine. He's perfectly healthy. He's got all his faculties intact. And now he doesn't. Okay. and now here's this disaster Kamala coming out. And so it's just, I think you need to acknowledge what's going on, but then you also got to be aware that there's actually some morons out there that think that she would be a good president.
Mm-hmm.
And I shake my head at some of that stuff. So and then and also too nowadays too, if you make a joke about, and they were talking about this on I was listening to some other podcast. Admittedly, Kamala Harris was a diversity hire. Biden said he's going to bring in a woman of color to be his. Okay, but if you say she's a DEI hire, now you're racist or you're sexist. And I'm like, you can't keep moving the goalpost. That's not how this game works.
Yeah.
All right. I'm a Lions fan. I come from years of seeing the goalpost moved all the time. And it was admittedly by our own team because they sucked. But now to see how this stuff is going on now, and, you try to play into it, you try to make jokes about it. And for the most part, most audiences are on board with you. Once in a while, you see somebody get a stick up their ass and they're, cross their arms and kind of look at you sideways. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not for you. Not everybody likes blue cheese.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know why I call myself blue cheese. I'm sorry.
A lot of comedians are kind of leaning heavily into crowd work these days, and it goes viral, and you see a lot of those clips on social media. Do you do more of that than you used to, or what's your approach to crowd work?
If it presents itself, I will. I don't go into the crowd looking for it. Some of the guys that are out there that do it and do it very well, are have got it dialed in. I mean, Matt Rife has just exploded because of that, and so many other guys too. Now everyone, you notice too, is trying to be the next Matt Rife. They're like, oh well, this guy did it. I can certainly go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Matt Rife also makes every woman completely moist as soon as they walk into a comedy club. So he's got that going for him. I start doing crowd work right now. There's what's that?
I said, not my wife. She hates him. But the rest of the world likes him. So.
The only way a woman is moist when she walks into the club with me is if she spills her drink on herself. That is the only thing that I would do to make a woman wet at all, Christian. I swear to you.
By any means necessary, right? So no worries.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's if it presents itself to me, I'll go ahead and do it. But it's not something that I personally lean into. But like I said, I have mad respect for the guys that can think on their feet and think on the fly. Dave Landau is one of those guys that can do that and is very, very good at it. So, I applaud those guys that have that skill set.
One of the things that's a perk of aging is you have new insights, new wisdom. For you, I imagine having so many reps on the road, you get better as a comedian. How do you think you've gotten? How you've improved over the years? I imagine you look back at your early days and go, "Oh, I can't believe I did that. I said that." Now you've got so much experience. You've got a lot of life lessons under your belt. How is the Derek Richards of today maybe different than 10 years ago?
Well, let's see. I mean, 12 years ago I was married. Now I'm divorced. So that's a whole different skill set. It's a
lot of material too.
I know, right? But it's a life is just the biggest instructor to you. It really is. When you look back and I see what I thought was funny before versus what I think is funny now, the stuff that I like to tell, the buttons I like to push, the things that make me laugh, the things that I try to resonate with the crowd. And I think too, it's also really now getting more comfortable with just talking about personal things that happened to me that perhaps before I never wanted to address. And so I think now having that level of self-confidence and vulnerability and being totally cool with throwing stuff out there that happened in my life that I would have never said before, I'm much more comfortable saying now. And I'm just like, you know what? Screw it. This is what happened to me. So.
Yeah. Just real briefly, I know you had a cancer battle and you've overcome it, but my wife has had breast cancer, and it just sort of, in a way, it flavors your life. It stains your life. It carries with you. Does talking about that part of your journey, is it cathartic? How does that kind of process into your act?
Absolutely. I mean, I had written a book called Whiskey, Cancer, and Bad Decisions, and it was it was just about the stuff that I was going through at the time when I got cancer and through my treatment, and just what I picked up on the back end of it. Because there's so much. As horrible as cancer is, when you survive it, to me, I've never felt better in my life about anything. And just you have a whole different attitude about just how you approach everything. Just the stuff that bothered you before doesn't bother you now. And so to me, it's cool to go up on stage and talk about it. And what's fun,
Yeah.
not fun, I would say it's it makes me feel good when somebody comes up and they talk about being a cancer survivor, and they're like, "Hey, what did you have? What did you go through?" And sometimes you just have the greatest conversation with these people afterwards. And to me, that's a cool component to it, where you just resonate with somebody in the crowd, and they can relate to whatever you're going through. So yeah, I never talked about it for the longest time, and then I just finally got comfortable with the encouragement of another comedian friend of mine. He goes, "You should talk about this on stage." And I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Oh yeah." So sometimes you got to have somebody kick you in the ass to move you forward.
Yeah. It's funny. My wife and I are politically very different. So 2016 was not a good November for us, and we there are a lot of scraps in the Toto household. But then she got cancer, and then when 2020 rolled around, it was Biden versus Trump, and we had different opinions, and we kind of looked at each other and said, "We're not going to fight over this. We're good. We get bigger fish to fry." So it was one of the odd perks of the cancer fight, but just knowing that, hey, so many things are far more important. When you look at the next few months, I mean, my gosh, I can't imagine what's going to happen politically next. Are you fired up to go in that direction? Is that still not a huge part of your act, or how do you filter in the current events when you're on the road at different clubs with different audiences, or do you kind of maybe steer away from that right now?
I mean, I'm going to keep doing it only because it's going to be on everybody's mind.
Yeah.
But really, there's two scenarios that I'm hoping for that happen right now. One, I can get on the next Elon Musk rocket to space and just be left there. Either that, or I've got to step in front of a Walmart truck and just be in traction for the next 3 months, but have a great big ass settlement coming my way afterwards. So
That's right.
so either way, I'm going to be a winner. But no, it's I mean, this is just unbelievable times. I mean, if you go back, I mean, think of this 3 years ago, say pre-COVID, say 5-6 years ago, to think that we would be going through this right now and seeing this level of anger in the country and divisiveness that's come about. And like I said, some of the people come out to a comedy club and they're still angry. They're still pissed. And you can try to make them laugh any way you want, and they're just not going to be happy. And there's always going to be those people in the crowd that are not going to want to hear what you have to say, or don't give a rat's ass about your opinion. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to leaning into it some more, to be honest with you. I think it's fun because people in the crowd, like I said, they know what's going on. They're not stupid. Now when you see all the stuff that's going on with the Olympics opening ceremony, how that is just unraveled. Unbelievable. I'm like, every time you think you have the best hand at the poker table, Christian, some idiot pulls out a fifth ace, and you didn't even know that was in the deck. I don't know what game I'm playing anymore.
That's right. Derek, one last question. It's kind of a creative question. When you're going through your day, when you see the Olympic situation, when you see what's going on in the news, do you write stuff down? Do you have like a recorder? How do you kind of, when the thoughts come to you, how do you get them, like secure them down so you don't forget them? I'm just curious.
I'll go ahead and send myself a message. I'll put it in, like, for me, it's mostly I'll send an email, so that way it pops up on my computer when I open it up, and it'll say, the subject line would be, gayest opening Olympic ceremony ever. And that's not incorrect to say, because everybody has said that, right and left. They both have said that. And here's drag queens at the Last Supper and a pale horse across the river. I'm like, okay, I don't know who gave this the green light on any level, but yeah. So for me, like, I just jot myself down notes and email it to myself so I can have it not only at my on my phone when I open up the email, but also on my computer, and then kind of get the thought process going and try to come up with some more stuff to add to it.
Yeah, and that'll just trigger all the things you're thinking about at the time. But well, Well, Derek, thank you so much for joining the show. I want to share where people can check you out. Of course, through August 1st, you're going to be on Normal World Blaze TV, a great place to check out comedy, sketches, irreverent humor. It's just a perfect fit for the work you do. But you're also going to be at Harrah's Casino Resort in Cherokee, North Carolina. It's August 7th through 11th, and then again, August 14th through 18th. And if you have any questions about Derek, just go to DerekRichards.com. All the tour dates, all the information. Also, you mentioned your book. You can get that there as well. Derek, thanks so much. I love your work. And thank you for putting a smile on our faces because, God, we need it right now. And you're the perfect guy to do it.
Well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me on, and love your work as well. Keep it up. It's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Fake news, it's the scourge of society, right? Well, then why are some people so eager to spread it? Now, I know you could say maybe that's happening on social media, and it is. I think even people I know and trust will sometimes share information that is not true, not accurate. I've done it a time or two. When I do see that, I do check that out. I'll go back and revisit it, take down the tweet, send out an apology. But there are some people who know things are fake and they spread them anyway because it's funny or because they want to hurt someone. Enter late night TV. Just in the last few days, there was this rumor going around that J.D. Vance, the Republican vice presidential candidate, well, he admitted in his memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, that he had intimate relations with a couch. Now, it sounds absurd on the surface, almost like a quasi-sequel to that American Pie film series, but I don't think it happened because when you sell 3 million books and there's something that crazy and salacious in the book, it might get around before now. It didn't. But that didn't stop John Oliver and Stephen Colbert from yucking it up, just sharing it far and wide. Oh, that's just crazy. And what John Oliver said was, boy, if you look at him, he looks like a guy who might have had sex with a couch, right? This is comedy. This is political satire. This is humor today. And listen, when you're a politician, when you're a public figure, there's going to be almost everything said about you. And it takes a special kind of skin to absorb that, to process that, to deal with that. And a lot of politicians are used to it. Nasty attacks just come with the business. But when you know something's fake and you spread it anyway, and you use it to mock a political candidate, what you're doing isn't even comedy. It's cruel, it's unnecessary, it's mean-spirited, and it really just goes against everything you're about. You know, John Oliver, I'm sure if you pulled him aside and asked him, are you a truth teller? He'd say, absolutely. He'd give you a 10-minute spiel about how he's a truth teller and how the work he's doing is so important. And yet some of the work he's doing now is spreading lies and poking fun at lies and trying to make people watching his show believe those lies or believe them enough to set some boundaries between certain candidates. Now, if you don't like J.D. Vance, it's perfectly fine. You don't want to vote for him. That's great too. It's the American way. Vote for who you want. But spreading these bits of misinformation, these slabs of fake news with a yuck and a smile, it's just dirty. It's just dirty. And they should know better. But again, either they do or they don't care. And the bottom line is there are no consequences. I mean, several major news outlets share these stories about Colbert and John Oliver spreading the fake news. Ha! Those cut-ups, those kids, what are they doing now? Those scamps, they're so funny. Well, you know, it's not funny. If they were spreading fake news about Biden or Harris or Obama, I don't think you'd get the same sort of yuck coverage. They shouldn't do it. You know, politicians give us enough to work with. They say silly things. They stretch the truth. Sometimes they lie. How about we make fun of that? Stick to that. And let the fake news, well, you've got CNN for that. Well, that's it for the show this week. Thank you again to Radio America for having me as part of their great podcast lineup. And while I have your attention, I hope you'll follow me on Twitter. I know I should call it X, but I'm a little bit old school. It's at Hollywood in Toto. And check out HollywoodInToto.com. It is the website. We are celebrating its 10-year anniversary in August. No woke, pro-free speech, pro-faith. And if you have liberal friends, people in your family who might want to check out the website, they are more than welcome. Yes, we have our political differences, but who doesn't love a great movie? I love it more than anything these days. We need entertainment. We need distractions. We need an escape from the craziness of the headlines. So check out HollywoodInToto.com. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Check us out on Rumble. All the places we're popping up. And I hope I'll see you all next time.